Okay, Marvin, good morning.
Good morning, Ken.
All right.
Okay.
I don't see Harvey this morning yet. And the other guys, many of them are at Minions, so I hustle out right after Torah reading, so hopefully they'll be getting on shortly, all right? There's Harvey. Good morning, Harvey.
Good morning.
Okay. I'm going to start with our sponsors, and then we'll pick up our Gemara for today. Okay. Somebody may have to mute themselves. Okay. A year of learning, Dr. Paul Koningsberg, in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuben ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nissen Hara Nissen ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malcolm Mann, in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Peres, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, Cheryl Sher, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of VRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel ben Harav Shimon. A month of learning, sponsored by Gila and Harold Saltzman, in memory of her mother, Eti bat Yitzchak Elchanan, by Chaim and Phyllis Reese, in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Yom Tov Lipa, and by Phyllis and Chaim Reese, in memory of her father, Pinchas ben Avraham. Have a week of learning, sponsored by Ron and Susan Podolsky, in memory of his mother, Freda Bashraga Feivel. And I believe since today is the 30th of November, right? That is it for today. Hashem is having Aliyah, Krank Rafir about the Yeshua Shem Mataliyah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good gebenched Yar.
Me.
Okay, welcome, Isaac. Okay. So we are on Tet Amud Aleph. We actually start with a Mishnah, a new Mishnah at the top of the Amud. Okay. I'm finding this material a little bit easier than our Eruvin material. That doesn't mean, though, that it's simple. Okay. Right? So I want to just start with a connection. Remember, we saw before, previously in the Gemara, that it said that those who would go to Yerushalayim for the Olei Regel, okay, they were under the context of neither they nor their property should be harmed, okay, while they're away. And as a result, in that context, it mentioned a chulda, as something that would attack chickens, let's say. Okay, there's Art Scroll translates chulda as a weasel. Koren translates it as another animal in the weasel family, known as a marten. Okay, M-A-R-T-E-N. Okay. The important item here is the fact that these animals can be carnivorous, but they don't have to be, okay? They could eat other things as well. And as we get through today's Gemara, we'll see why that element is important in understanding a particular piece of the Gemara. Okay? All right. So we'll now start on Tat Amud Aleph, the Mishnah. Ein chosheshin shema gorara chulda mibayit labayit. According to the Mishnah Tanakama, we do not have to suspect that a weasel or a marten will drag the crumbs after the house has been had its bedika, after its search from one house to another. Umimakom lamakom, and from one place in the house to another place in the house. Interestingly enough, if I remember the halacha correctly, Shulchan Aruch actually makes reference to an achbar as the animal and not necessarily chulda. We can get into that another time if we have the time. The im kain michatzer lechatzer, because if that were the case, says Tanakama in our Mishnah, from one courtyard to another, umeir le'ir, from one city to another, ein ledavar so. There would be no end to the matter of discovering, could it lead it from here to here, here to there. Okay. Gemara. Tama de lo chazina de shakal. The reason is that we did not see it take the item. Okay. The chametz. Ha. Therefore, says the Gemara here, chazina de shakal. If we saw it take the item, chayshinan ubai bedika, then we would need to suspect, and then we would require an additional bedika. Okay, we're just getting started. Okay, right? Va'amai, and why is that the case? Okay, nema achalte. Perhaps we might say that the animal ate it. Milotnan, but who was it that taught? Midorot, okay? Ha'akum tmeim, right? That again, we say that the residences of Gentiles are tameh. V'kama shaha b'mador, v'yehe hamador tzarich b'dika, and how much time, okay, is it such that we say that the resident had to, who was a non-Jew, okay, and therefore the house remains tameh. There we say it's 40 days. So we're going to apply that same principle here and say how much time is it that if there's residence, the house might need then also a second search or a new search. Arba'im yom, 40 days. V'afal pi she'em lo isha. And this implies even if there is no woman in the household. The kol makom shechulda, okay, says the Gemara, right? And any place where we see that any place where there is a chulda, b'chazir, yicholim lahaloch, okay? But there we say also that if the weasel or marten or pig is there, right, in that house, in that vicinity, ein sarich bedika. We say it does not require another, okay, another search if it had been searched once or if it had never been searched, okay? It wouldn't require a second, just an initial bedika, okay? The assumption being that the animal will eat particularly the leaven if it's there. Now, Amar Rabbi Zera says, Rabbi Zera lo kasha. is not necessarily a problem here. And here's where we get to the item I suggested at the outset, ha b'basar, v'ha b'lechem. In one case, we're talking about meat, right, flesh. In another case, we're talking about the leaven, the bread, right? So certainly an animal that eats flesh, right? B'basar lo mishara, says the Gemara. If it eats meat, it's not going to leave anything. B'lechem mishara, okay? But if it's an animal that ordinarily eats meat, and all there is the bread, it's possible that it might still leave over certain things, certain crumbs or certain pieces of the bread. Amar Rava, so Rava now says, Hi my, is that really the case? Can we make that kind of a comparison? Bishlema hatam, that's acceptable in that case. Okay, we're going to see which case is he referring to here. Okay, namely the dwelling, right? Amor hava, amor lo hava. I could say that he was there. I could say it wasn't there. Namely, it's possible that something was there in the house, like a corpse, for example, that might render a tameh. Or I could say perhaps there was nothing there. Ve'im timsa lomar hava. And even if you want to say that there was such a thing in the house to render a tameh, we said like a corpse, amor achalte, I might say, okay, that perhaps the animal ate it. Aval hacha, but in our case, namely with leaven, devadai de chazina de shakal, that here we certainly say that we saw that it took it. Mi amar da achalte, is it possible to say that he ate it all? Have safek, uvadai. Here we have a question of a doubt and a, let's say, certainty. Ve'ein safek motzi midei vadai. And we say that a doubt does not remove the status of the certainty, right? Ve'ein safek motzi midei vadai, asks the Gemara. Do we really say that? Vahatanya. But isn't it taught elsewhere in another Braita? Chaver shemet, v'heniach megura melea perot. Excuse me. You have a person who is considered a chaver, okay? A person stringent in tithing and in maaser and in tumantara. And that chaver died. What happened? And he left in his storehouse that it was full of produce, full of fruit perhaps, okay? Va'afilu hein b'nei yoman, and even if they are only there within the context of a day, harei hein b'cheskat mitukanim, they are considered to be in the status of having been prepared. In other words, having been tithed. Right? So the Gemara says, Vaha hacha, but here, in this case, in this Braita, Devadai tvili hani piri, that it's clear that this produce was initially tevel, right, untied. Vesafek m'usharin, and it's question, it's doubt whether it was tied. Vesafek lo m'usharin, and it's question, it's uncertain if it wasn't tied. V'ka'ate safek umotzimi de vadai. And we have a situation according to the Braita that says that there's this doubt, and it, right? And it overcomes, it removes the status of this certainty. This produce being certainly initially tevel, but the vadai, okay, And that's also the safek, whether it's still tevel or bintai. But we have the Braita saying there's a vadai that the chaver tied. Okay, so the Gemara continues. Hatam vadai uvadai. Now there, that's a point of a certainty with another certainty. Why? Devadai ma'asrei k'derabi Chanina chozah. Why? Because it's clear that it's a certainty as the view of Rabbi Chanina chozah. The Amar Rabbi Chanina chozah, that says Rabbi Chanina chozah, chazaka al chaver she'ein motzi mitachet yado davar she'eino mitukan. That we have a chazaka, we have an assumed status, right? That a chaver never allows produce or items from his hand, so to speak, from under his control, that has not been made fit, appropriate. Ve'ibayat ema. And if you want, I might say here, safek v'safek. Maybe it's both uncertain and uncertainly. Namely, dilma me'ikara, that perhaps originally a more delot tevile Rabbi Oshaya, that I might say that it is not initially tevel, okay, like Rabbi Oshaya. The Amar Rabbi Oshaya, says Rabbi Oshaya, ma'arim adam al tevuato, that a person may use the artifice, as they like to translate it, right? Trickery, okay? Cleverness, I think, is a better word, okay? Sometimes he may use cleverness, Adam, al tvuato, regarding his produce, umachnisa b'motz shala, and he could bring the produce in while it's still in its chaff, okay? And of course, even if he brings it in and it's brought in as chaff, it's considered generally more animal food than human food. Therefore, he wouldn't need to do maaser, but he could snack on it even in that situation. Kadei shetehei behemto ochelet uptura min hamaaser. Why? So that his animal would be able to eat it, and he would be exempt then from tithing. Ve'ein safek motzi midei vadai. And you say then that a doubt does not remove the status of a certainty. V'hatanya. But aren't we also taught now in another Braita, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'aseh b'shifchato shel matzik. We had a situation where the female servant, non-Jewish female servant of a very violent person, okay? The Rimon, in the area, this location of Rimon, Shehitila nefel labor, that she threw a embryo into a cistern, into a well, okay? A stillborn child is how Art Scroll translated, but it could have been what appeared to be an embryo. Uba kohen v'hitzitbo leida im zacharhu im nekevahi. And a kohen bent over the pit, the bore, to look in to see whether it was a male or a female. Now there's a lot of commentary on this particular element. I won't go into the detail, but just quickly, number one, why did the Kohen have to look? Even if he had a reason to look, he would become tamei. Number two, maybe he wanted to look to see, since he was tamei, how long his tumah was. So those are all possibilities. However, the Gemara continues, Ubama aseh lifnei chachamim, and the incident came before the sages. V'tiaruhu mipnei shehulda ubardalas mitzuyim. And the reason they said he was tahor is because in that pit, they were aware that there were creatures, okay? Maybe a weasel or a marten, maybe a polecat were found there. Both of these animals are carnivorous, okay? And therefore, their assumption is that the animal could have dragged the stillborn child or the embryo, okay, away. Vaha hacha devadai hitila. And here, it's very clear that she certainly threw it in there. V'safek gararuhu. And it's uncertain whether they could have dragged it. V'safek lo gararuhu hahishata. And it's a question, uncertain, if it didn't drag it away at that particular time. V'ka'ate safek umotzimi de vadai. And here we have the doubt, the uncertainty, removing the status of the certainty. So the Gemara is going to now adjust the incident. Lo tema shehitila nefel labor. Don't say that she threw a stillborn child, okay, into the pit. Ela ema, I would say, shehipila kemin nefel labor, that she threw something similar to a kind of stillborn embryo or whatever, maybe just a birth sac, we don't know, into the pit. Vahave safek v'safek. And it is a situation of an uncertainty versus another uncertainty. Vaha leda im zacharhu im nekevahu. But the incident language said that the Kohen looked over to see whether it was male or whether it was female. Katani, that's what it taught. Hachi ka'ama. This is what it means to tell us. Leida im ruach hipil. Okay, he wanted to see if it was simply wind. Okay, in other words, something that wasn't real flesh or not. Im nefel hipila, or if it was something fleshy, I'm going to use that word, stillborn, okay, or air, a sack filled with air, okay, that she threw. V'im timtzar lomar nefel hipila, and if you want to find and say that she did actually throw something fleshy, okay, and it was a stillborn child, leida im zacharhu v'im nekevahi, then to know if it was a male or a female, because perhaps, right, in this case, we could argue she might come to the Kohen and ask, right, how long is her tumah? When can she go? What does she have to do? Things like that. Does she have to bring a korban? Does she have to go to mikvah, etc., etc.? Okay. Now, ve'ibayat ema. And if you want, says the Gemara, right? I could say the following: Hatam vadai uvadai. Maybe that's a situation of an example of one certainty versus another certainty.
Even the
Ivan de Hulda ubardalas mitsuyinsha. It's known that the weasel or the marten and the polecat are found there. Vadai gararuhu bahahishata. It's certain that they would have dragged it at that time. So the Gemara then picks up, Nehi shi'uri mishayre. Okay, maybe there would have been something left over. Migrar Mihat vadai gararum bahahushat. And even then, the Gemara might say, into that situation, right, it could argue that it might leave over some of it, but certainly it would drag the rest of it away, right? And right, at that time. Now, we have Lishna Achrina. We have some other language here. Nehi de vadai achlum lo amrinan vadai gararuhu lechuraihu amrinan. The other language is the following. Let it be that, again, it would still be a certainty that it would have eaten it. We can't say. But certainly, they would have dragged it into their holes, okay, or into their layers, or into their, where they live. That we could say. Now, umi amrinim, ein chosheshin shema gerara chuda. And is it possible we might say that we don't suspect that perhaps the marten or the weasel dragged it away? V'hakatane sefer. But here it's written at the end. Masha Meshayer Yinichenu B'tzina Shelo Yehe Tzarich B'dika Acharav. Coming back now to our example, perhaps of the 11, is it possible that we might say that what was left is there is hidden, okay? It's sort of in secret, right? In that case, right? Or put it in a private place. That is what our Mishnah told us, right? Shelo yehe tzarich b'dika acharav. That a person should put their chametz in a secure, let's say, location, so they don't have to do a second b'dika. Amar Abaye lo kasha. Abaye says, no, we don't have to have a problem here. Why? Ha ba'arba'a asar, ha b'shlosha asar. In one case, where we have to put it away is when the B'dika was done the 14th. The other when it's done on the 13th. B'shlosha asar, the shachiach rifta, b'kulhu bate. On the 13th, okay, we find that there's bread, so to speak, all over the house. Lo mitznah is not need to hide it, to put it in a secure place. Ba'arba'asa, de lo shachicha rifta bekulhu bate. On the 14th, where we would not find leaven or bread all over the house, mitzna'ah. It's necessary to hide it, to put it in a secure place. So that was Abaye's explanation. Rava, however, is not going to be happy with it, of course, and challenge. Amar Rava, says Rava. V'chi chulda neviyahui. Would you say that this, and this is both the Koran and Art Scroll pick up on this, that Rava is really using a, I guess what we would call a play on words, a pun, okay? He says, first of all, the direct translation would be, would you say that the weasel or the marten is a prophetess? But what happens is, remember, if the story of Shmuel and Saul, who did Saul go to? He went to a witch who was a prophetess whose name was Huldah. Okay, so just interesting that that play there. So the Rava continues, Diyada daha'idna arbisa, that the animal would know that today is the 14th, velo afe ad laorta, okay, and there's nothing baked until the evening. In other words, there's going to be no bread stuffs or leaven stuffs or dough, or, things like that. Umishare umitmara. Okay, and that some would be left over and would be concealed. El Amar Rava, says Rava, Masha Mishayer Yinichenu B'tzinah. That which is left over, he says, has to be put away in a secure place. Shemati tol chulda b'fanenu, lest the animal, the marten or the weasel, take it before us. V'yehet tzarich b'dika acharav, and it would be necessary to do a second bedika of the house. Tanya kavate de Rava, and we have a item that teaches according to the view of Rava as follows: Harotze le'echol chametz achar bedika. If one chooses, or wants to eat any chametz after they've done the search, ketzad ya'aseh, what shall be done? Masha mishayer, that what's left over, yenichenu b'tzina, he should put in a secure place. Shelo tavo chulda v'tito b'fanenu, in order that an animal, weasel, marten, whatever, should not come and take it in front of us. V'yehet tzarich b'dika acharav, and we would have to do another search after it. Now, Rav Meri Amar, says Rav Meri, Gzera Shemi Yaniach Aser V'yamtza Tesha. Okay, what is he referring to? Okay, Rav Meri says the rabbis therefore made a decree, that you have to put your leftover leaven in a secure place, lest when one does their actual bedika, and we follow the practice of putting out 10 pieces, you only come up at the end with 9, okay, and find 9. Okay, having finished that particular aspect of the Gemara, okay, we go on now to another discussion, okay, and this discussion is still going to deal primarily with the issue we said of the search, okay. Teisha tziburin shel matzah. Let's assume one has 9 piles of matzah, ve'echad shel chametz, and 1 pile of chametz. Va'ata achbar v'shakal, and then along comes a mouse or a rat or whatever and takes it. And here's why I suggested the Shulchan Aruch uses achbar instead of using the halacha using chulda. Okay? V'lo yadinan, and we don't know, right? Im matzah shakal, okay? If the mouse or the animal, right, took it from one of the piles of matzah, ichamet shakal, or if they took it from one of the piles, the 1 pile of chametz. Haina teshu chanuyot. That is similar to the text, the Mishnah, where we talk about in Chulin 9 stores, right? Where what happens? Peresh, if something has been separated, va'ata achbar v'shakal, and along comes the mouse and takes it, right? Hainu sefer. That is similar to the end of that Mishnah. Excuse me. The Tnan, where it's taught, Teisha chanuyot, kulan mochrin basar shchuta. 9 stores, where all 9 sell slaughtered meat, right? Ve'echat mocheret basar nevela, and one of the stores sells nevela meat. Okay, they want to call that unkosher meat. We can call it whatever. Okay, V'lakach me'achat mehen, and one takes from one of them. Ve'eno yodea me'eza mehen lakach. He bought meat from one of the stores, but he doesn't know. He's not sure which one he took it from. Sveko, okay, there is his doubt. Asur, okay. As a result, we don't know, even though there are 9 of one and 1 of the other, the chances are really 50-50 in that case, that he could have bought it treif meat or kosher meat. So that's why when it's a fixed place, we say clearly the 50-50 chances, as a result, it is asur. It is forbidden. Ubanimsa. But let's say we happen to find a wrapped piece of meat outside, okay? There on a bench outside the mall on which there are these 10 stores, right? What happened? Halach hachar haro. There, right? He can say, since there are 9 kosher stores and 1 non-kosher store, we can follow the majority rule. And the majority would be that meat would be then permitted. Okay? However, the Gemara continues now. Shnei tziburim. Let's say we only had 2 piles. Echad shel matzah ve'echad shel chametz. 1 of matzah and 1 of chametz, of leaven. V'lifneihem shnei batim. And in front of them are 2 houses. Echad baduk ve'echad she'eno baduk. 1 house has been searched, another house has not been searched. Va'atu shnei achbarim, and along come 2 mice. Echad shekal matzah ve'echad shekal chametz. And 1 matzah takes from the, 1 mouse takes from the matzah pile, and 1 mouse takes from the chametz pile. V'lo yad'inan hai lahai aisle. And we don't know then which mouse went into which house, okay? Whether this mouse from the matzah pile went into the house already searched, or went into the house not searched, or whether the mouse from the chametz pile went into the house that was searched, or the house that wasn't searched. V'hai lahai aisle, and this one went into this one, right? Hainu shtei kupot. That is similar to the example of 2 baskets, we can say, or 2 boxes, right? Namely, the Tznan, as where it's taught in a Mishnah, shtei kupot, echad shel chulin ve'echad shel truma, 2 different boxes or 2 different baskets, in which one contained chulin and another contains truma. V'lifneihem shnei sa'in, and before them there are 2, let's say, containers full, 2 measures, say 2 measures, okay? Echad shel chulin ve'echad shel truma. Sorry. 1 is full of chulin and 1 is full of truma. V'naflu elu l'toch elu, and these 2 measures fell into the 2 boxes or the 2 baskets. Mutarin, we say they're permitted. Sha'ani omer. Why, says the Gemara? Because I can claim chulin l'toch chulin naflu, utruma l'toch truma naflu. Okay, maybe I can make that statement, right? I can claim that, right? Ever the Gemara says, Emur da amrinan, right? Sha'ani omer. Really, can you perhaps you could say that I would use that idea, that principle, that I could say, I can claim that that's the case. We'll just go over just a tiny bit. Bitruma derabana. Why? Because there we have an example that truma is a rabbinic edict. The chametz, whereas in our case, the chametz deoraita, miyamrinan, but with chametz, which is a biblical prohibition, right? Can we really say that? So what does the Gemara answer us? The following. Atu, b'dikat chametz deoraita. Okay. Now, can we really say that the search for chametz is a Torah mandated act? The rabbananhi. That's really a rabbinic requirement. Why? The midoraita, the ba'alma sagile, right? But namely that it's sufficient according to Torah simply to be mavater, to nullify that chametz, okay, in your heart, in your mind, and that is sufficient. Okay, so we'll stop right there today, everybody, and pick up tomorrow. We'll see if there's a mouse in the house with the chametz.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
You're welcome.
take care, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Green.
Okay,
Thank you, Rabbi.
take care.
Have a good day.
Be well. Stay safe.
But that was a mousetrap.
He has a cold. That sounded interesting, no?
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. All right, here we go.
Did it sound like he has a cold?
Oh, Rabbi?
That's what it sounded like to me.
It's always like that. All right, how you doing, Dolly?
Okay.
Ready for breakfast?